Chicago, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Miami, all prominent American cities in their own right, and some of the first that come to mind when you think of the United States. But there's only room for one that stands alone at the top, and that is none other than New York City. America's largest and most prominent city is often thought of as the center of everything American. However, at the same time, it is the least like every other American city. And on this video, we're going to go over 10 reasons why New York is different than other American cities. Now, some of the things on this list might surprise you. Some might shock you. Some might even anger you. But at the end of the day, this video is all about New York City. So without further ado, we're going to get into the list of 10 reasons why New York is different than other American cities.
First off, let's talk about the size. Here in the US, there are 4 ways one can use to compare the sizes of cities: the city proper, the urbanized area, the metro area, and the larger combined statistical area. Well, no matter which way you want to slice it, New York is on top in all 4 categories. First is the city population. This metric probably has the least amount of usefulness for comparison due to the variances among annexation laws across the US states. But here we can see New York sitting at 8.25 million as of 2023, outpacing the combined population of second and third place Los Angeles and Chicago. This is despite New York losing population faster than any other city over the past few years. It is not even close on this measurement. Then there's the metro area. Now, I found this one to be the best for making an accurate comparison between city sizes. For New York, it includes all of Long Island, much of northern New Jersey, and even Pike County, Pennsylvania. In 2023, it was about 19.9 million people. Second place Los Angeles trailed by around 5.7 million people, while third place Chicago had 9.26 million, less than half of New York. After that, we can look at urbanized area. This one measures continuous developed or built up areas in a region. On this one, New York dominates yet again with a huge gap between it and everyone else. And finally, we have combined statistical area. This one is good for measuring the greater regional population of an area and can contain multiple economic hubs within one region. For New York City, the combined statistical area adds Trenton, New Jersey, nearly half of Connecticut, as well as counties stretching further north into New York State. Now, this is the one metric where the competition does get a little closer, if you want to call a 3.5 million gap close, that is. For Los Angeles, this metric adds the Inland Empire of Riverside and San Bernardino counties into the mix and covers a massive area in Southern California. Yet still, it falls more than 3.5 million behind New York. Chicago is replaced by Washington, D.C. for the third spot and is over 8 million behind Los Angeles. So even though LA put up a better fight in terms of combined statistical area, New York's size is just too much to overcome. And another fun fact about New York's size is that the city alone is more populated than 38 of the 50 other U.S. states. The next thing is the city layout and structure. More specifically, the 5-borough system and county divisions. In the United States, there are certainly other cities that cross county lines. You can often find cities that partially bleed over into a neighboring county or 2. You can even find a few cities that have land partially in as many as 4 counties. Well, New York is something different in that regard. It is the only city in the United States that has land in 5 different counties. Not only that, but New York encompasses the entirety of all 5 of those counties rather than just having a small slither of land in them. Its 5 boroughs are each their own county. Manhattan is New York County, Brooklyn is Kings County, Queens is Queens County, Bronx is Bronx County, and Staten Island is Richmond County. And each borough has an elected borough president, a structure not found anywhere else in the country. This is the result of the 1898 consolidation of New York City that brought all 5 boroughs under a single city government. Brooklyn, in particular, even had its own core central business district, or downtown. And to no surprise, it was the most reluctant to join the combined city, with the smallest margin of any borough voting for consolidation. The city layout is different than others as well. Manhattan functions as the core borough and is locally known as the city. It has a very well-designed grid structure for its streets. You can easily navigate around Manhattan just from someone telling you what street they're on. First Street begins down in Lower Manhattan, and the street numbers increase as you head north through Midtown and Uptown or Harlem. Now, this isn't to say that any other American cities don't have grids in places. However, what you'll normally see in other parts of the country is that the oldest part of the city began with a grid, and things got a little wacky as the city grew. Taking a look at Charlotte, North Carolina, a famous relocation spot for New Yorkers, the Uptown area has a grid-style pattern, But outside of that, it becomes a mashup of wacky streets running every which way. Ironically enough, Salt Lake City, of all places, comes perhaps the closest to being navigable by its grid and street names. But I'd probably have to do a whole video on how Salt Lake City streets work. Now let's talk about density. When you travel around most of the US, what you'll find is a dense urban core in most cities. That core then gives way to lighter, more sprawling development. New York City, on the other hand, is not only significantly more dense in its core borough of Manhattan, but even the outer boroughs, aside from Staten Island, exceed the density of most American downtown areas. At over 29,000 people per square mile, New York City is far and away the most dense city in the US. The second most dense large city is San Francisco, which is only at 18,600 people per square mile. To go even further, the top 12 most dense cities in the United States, regardless of population, are all in the New York metro area. And if we want to narrow it down to Manhattan alone, its density of over 74,000 people per square mile makes it one of the most densely populated places on Earth. You can't walk outside of New York City without seeing people. No matter if it's raining, snowing, 10 degrees, whatever, there will be people out and about walking around New York City. And you don't really see this in other American cities, as the weather can often force people into their cars, or there simply isn't enough to walk to. You need a special event in most cities to get even a fraction of the people on the streets that you will see in New York. And New York is the only place in America where you can walk outside and find almost everything you need within a few blocks of walking distance. Shopping, food, entertainment, even work. With so much densely concentrated development, you can live perfectly fine and rarely leave your primary neighborhood. Now, the next way New York is different is the diversity. If you look at America as a whole, you can pretty easily classify most regions of the country with simple levels of diversity. In the South, you're going to find mostly black and white Americans, with Florida and Texas having higher Hispanic populations. Out west, things are mostly white and Hispanic. In the Midwest, things are also mostly white with smaller black and Hispanic minorities compared to the South, while the Northeast is similar to the Midwest, but with slightly higher Asian, black, and Hispanic minorities. Well, New York is different. You can't really paint the city with such a broad brush. The diversity is far and away the most of any large U.S. city. It was around 31% non-Hispanic white, 29% Hispanic, 23% black, 14% Asian, and almost 9% mixed race people. It gets even more diverse as you go deeper into the numbers. Going from races into ethnic groups, you start getting large numbers of groups that you don't see with such concentration anywhere else in the country. You have Chinese, Polish, Haitian, Dominicans, Jamaicans, Germans, Puerto Ricans, of course the Irish and Italians. You have Indians, Russians, Arabs, you name it, they are in New York. And not only are they here, but they've brought their cultural offerings with them. New York has the largest concentration of these groups in the entire Western Hemisphere. Also, even though it's not the highest percentage of black population, the New York metro area has the highest overall number of black Americans in the country. It is said that over 800 languages are spoken around the city. And from walking around, I do believe it. Some jokingly say that if you want to experience other cultures without leaving the US, then just come on up to New York. Which leads us into the next topic, which is the culture. Most other American cities have a particular culture that they are known for. Certain types of people you can find, certain types of food that are popular and such. Well, New York is a different animal in that regard. New York has people from almost everywhere in the world that you can think of, and is said to have people speaking as many as 800 languages, something I don't doubt. When I visited the city for the first time and took a stroll along Brooklyn Bridge Park, it wasn't uncommon to hear several non-English languages being spoken. In some cases, it felt like you were the exception for speaking English. New York's culture was shaped by being a primary place that many immigrants entered the country to become American citizens. Many have come from every corner of the globe. The Irish, Italians, Asians, Africans, all are in New York. Many forms of American music either had a strong presence in New York or outright originated there. Hip-hop, punk rock, disco, salsa, and garage house all came from New York, with hip-hop later becoming the most popular genre in the country. The city was also the center for jazz music in the 1940s. New York is a global center for the international art market. The Upper East Side has many art galleries, and the downtown neighborhood of Chelsea is known for more than 200 art galleries that are home to modern art from both upcoming and established artists. You can also find prominent galleries in places such as Dumbo in Brooklyn. Another thing you can find in New York is stand-up comedy. The city has more stand-up comedy clubs than any other and is known as the birthplace and heart of stand-up. And of course, there is the food. One of the things I love to do when traveling is check out the unique food options of a place. Well, New York City just has too many to count. First, there's the famous New York pizza that people from New York always talk about. It is characterized by its gigantic foldable slices, and I have to say it was pretty good. Then there's the cheesecake, New York style or Jewish style cheesecake that uses a cream cheese base. And we have the New York bagel, which is now the standard bagel used around the United States. Honestly, there's just so much food in New York that one could do a whole video just talking about New York City foods. And one thing you'll also find is cuisines from places in New York that you won't find elsewhere. On my last visit, we stayed in Midtown near 54th and Broadway, and within walking distance, you can have Mediterranean, Russian, French, Italian, or Asian cuisine, or just pizza or burger. Heck, I didn't even know what Russian cuisine is, as I've never seen it in any other American city, only in New York. Up next is the influence. Now, every major American city or metro does have some influence over other cities in its region, its state, and sometimes even surrounding states. Places like Chicago in the Midwest or Atlanta in the South even have influence over their entire region. We've discussed this on a few older videos on the channel. But New York's influence is on a whole different level. Not only does New York dominate its metro area, its home state, and surrounding states, but New York wields heavy influence over the entire country. What happens in your city is local news. What happens in New York is national news. When was the last time you went a day without seeing a headline that generated out of New York? What people are doing in New York is what people in other parts of the country tend to follow, from fashion to music, movies, art, and even some facets of urban design. New York's influence perhaps can best be stated by its main street of Broadway. One thing I've noticed from traveling to over 600 American cities is that a ton of cities also have a road named Broadway. Where did this name come from? None other than New York. The prominence and dominance of Broadway in New York has inspired many smaller cities around the country to name one of their most prominent streets Broadway as an ode to the famous New York Street. From Nashville, Tennessee to Little Boise, Idaho, Broadway is all over America. Next to Washington, MLK, and Lincoln, Broadway might be the most famous street name in the country. Another thing projecting New York's influence is the presence of media in the city. Almost every major American media outlet is either headquartered in the New York area or has a large presence there. ABC, CBS, Fox, and NBC all have their headquarters in Midtown Manhattan. These networks then have affiliate networks all around the country. No matter where you live in the US, you'll find one of these networks with a presence who are under the New York headquarters. These networks help project New York's culture around the country and the world. Then, even though Los Angeles is known for movies, New York is no slouch there either. Tons of American TV shows and films are set in and around New York City. The list is so long that I couldn't even find a place that quantifies it. Americans all over the country love watching TV, media, and even social media that is based in New York. Popular shows such as Friends, Sex and the City, Seinfeld, and NYPD Blue are all based on life in New York. And what occurs in these New York shows further influences American culture as a whole. Gotham City from Batman is New York City. The popular comic book character Spider-Man can only exist in New York. Other American cities just don't have the buildings. You can't go web slinging in Los Angeles, though I did happen to spot him hanging out in Toronto a while back. New York's influence doesn't even end at America's borders. The entire world pays attention to what happens in New York, and even the United Nations is headquartered in the city. The next way New York is different is the economy. Most American cities are known for one or two dominant industries. Detroit is the motor city. LA is known for entertainment. Houston is known for its oil and energy. Well, New York is known for everything. While finance is perhaps the strongest industry in the city, anchored by the New York Stock Exchange, the city is also known for its presence in communications, tech, arts and film, architecture, and healthcare. Real estate and fashion are also big business in the area, and a growing area known as Silicon Alley has popped up in the city's Flatiron District, making it somewhat of a tech hub as well. And even with the decline of American manufacturing, the New York area still is a manufacturing powerhouse. The port of New York and New Jersey is the busiest on the East Coast. At almost $2.3 trillion, the GDP of the New York metro area is far and away higher than any other in the US. Again, larger than second and third place Los Angeles and Chicago combined. Excluding the US itself, only 7 countries have a higher GDP than the New York area. It outpaces entire countries such as Canada, Russia, South Korea, and Brazil. New York packs a higher punch than any other city on the planet. With such a strong and robust economy, if one industry is facing tough times in New York, then there's always another industry thriving. The city just keeps on moving. The next way New York is different is the transit. In most American cities, you'll first look to the roads and driving for getting around. It's the default, and most Americans don't even look at bus routes, bus schedules, or things like that. They just hop in their car and go. Well, in New York, that is not the case. For one, there's a good chance that you can walk to your destination, and in the event that you can't, your first instinct is to look to one of the many transit options rather than your own personal vehicle. The Metropolitan Transit Authority, commonly known as the MTA, is the transit authority that operates a vast network of rail, buses, and subways in the New York metro area. It is the largest transit authority in North America. As of 2017, it had 2,429 rail cars, 6,418 subway cars, and 5,725 buses. It operates 24 hours around the clock, so no matter when you want to use it, the subway is available. Sometimes you can even catch a free showdown on the subway. Something that simply doesn't exist in other American cities. You're in New York and you want to get around, you hop on the subway, the train, or the bus. Except Staten Island, of course. The forgotten borough appears to have been forgotten when it came to the subway as well. Poor Staten Island. But they are connected to the city's bus system, and the ferry to Manhattan has now been made free. Or should you decide to drive in New York, it is going to cost you lots of tolls and lots of stress, as driving around New York is one of the most painful driving experiences in America, which I went over in my video earlier on what it is like to drive around New York City. Which brings us into the next thing, which is driving. Driving in New York is unlike anything else you'll see in America. It is not for the faint of heart. In the rest of the country, you have a vast network of interstate highways, major arterials, and general surface streets that can get you to your destination in a reasonable amount of time. There might be some congestion here and there, but New York is a different animal. First, you're going to have to pay in many cases to get around this area. New York is mostly on islands and thus has many bridges and tunnels crossing the area. Most of these are tolled, so you have to have your credit card ready if you expect to drive any significant distance around your metro area. And then when you do get to your destination, you're going to pay a hefty fee for parking. Yes, in New York, even the interstates carry tolls. I-95 is tolled at the George Washington Bridge, I-87 is tolled through Westchester, and I-78 is tolled from the New Jersey Turnpike through the Holland Tunnel to enter Manhattan. And don't think you're going to escape paying to drive if you only stay in your city or borough. New York City has a citywide speed limit of 25 and has an intricate network of cameras and other monitoring equipment to send you a hefty fine should you exceed it. And conveniently reintroduced after the November election is congestion pricing, meaning you will have another toll should you choose to drive in Manhattan below 60th Street. But the cost of driving isn't the only thing that makes New York different. It's the way one must drive that will have Americans from other cities pulling their hair out. In New York, one must be very aggressive to drive. Every square inch of pavement is up for grabs, and if you snooze, you lose. People will not be letting you in to merge anywhere. If you hesitate for a second, you will be cut off. As soon as the light turns green, your foot better be mashing the gas pedal, or the drivers around you will let you know about yourself. Double parking is a way of life, and you can expect the far right and far left lane to be blocked at any given time. Horn honking is the local love language. And might shock you at first, but don't worry. They're only smashing the horn to show you that they care. And with all of that, it can take you quite a while just to go a small distance. Don't be surprised if you're sitting in your car or cab and someone on a bike passes you by. Now, if you're intent on avoiding the transit system, there are many yellow cabs and Uber and Lyft drivers in the area, but they're going to cost you quite a bit. In the rest of the country, driving is a standard expectation. In New York, it is a luxury. And the final thing is the New York City pride, or as some might call it, New York City arrogance. When someone is from New York, they will be sure to let you know. Growing up in the South, we often had kids move down from New York, and they've made it a point to constantly remind you that I'm from New York, I'm from Brooklyn, I'm different. This is how we did it in New York, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. New York has long been the epicenter of new arrivals into America, and after establishing themselves, many will venture to other parts of the country. So it's quite common to find New York transplants all over the U.S., especially along the eastern seaboard. No matter where you encounter them, New Yorkers will be sure to let you know how much better this or that was in New York compared to where they are now. From the food, to the culture, the women, the transit, to the entertainment, you name it. New York has the biggest ego by far of any American city, and you'd have to take the entire state of Texas just to rival it. New Yorkers clearly view their city as the pinnacle of human achievement. And based on what we've covered in the earlier video, I can't say they don't have a point. Many from other countries and Americans alike fantasize about New York. New York is the only place in America where one can build entire social media platforms centered around it. If you look at TikTok, Instagram, or right here on YouTube, you can absolutely be a highly successful New York content creator. While if you try to do that in other cities, it just doesn't hit the same. Everyone is fascinated by what's going on in New York and love to watch it. And there might be more videos about New York on social media than any other city in the world. Even myself, when I finally visited New York for the first time in the fall of 2022, I was blown away as the skyline appeared from the New Jersey Turnpike and the view from across the Hudson. While it's cool to enter places like Chicago, Dallas, Miami, and such, entering New York is simply a different level of experience. New Yorkers are aware of this, and when you encounter them, they'll quickly let you know that they're from New York to make sure that you understand the hierarchy of American cities. There's New York, and then there's everywhere else. So whether you want to call it pride or arrogance, New York is New York. It stands alone at the top.
All right, and there you have it, guys. 10 reasons why New York is different than other American cities. Now, is there anything on this list that surprised you? Anything that you agree or disagree with? Also, do you believe that New York is the greatest city in America or the greatest city in the world? Or do you think there are better cities and that New Yorkers are just overhyping their city? Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.